MegaPodTastic.
Good morning, MegaPodlings. Let me ask you a question. If I were to scream, "Hey, you guys!" what would you think of? Seriously, I want to know. What does that make you think of? Well, before we get to that, back in 1975, the classic film Jaws came out. There is a scene in Jaws where the characters of Hooper and Quint compare scars. They look at the various scars they've had. 1993, the movie Lethal Weapon 3 came out. There's a scene in Lethal Weapon 3 where Mel Gibson and Rene Russo also compared their scars. It's a throwback to this classic scene in Jaws. Well, 1995, Kevin Smith writes the script for the movie Mallrats. The main characters in Mallrats were named T.S. Quint and Brody Bruce. Both of them named after characters from Jaws. T.S. Quint was, of course, named after Quint, the Robert Shaw character from Jaws. And Brody Bruce, that was an amalgam of Chief Brody, and Bruce was the name of the shark. So Brody Bruce was actually a name of two Jaws characters. Well, in the original draft of Kevin Smith's script, the characters in the food court meet up with a character named Hooper X. Hooper X does not actually end up in the final version of Mallrats. He does show up in the movie Chasing Amy. But in the original draft of the script, T.S. Quint, Brody Bruce, and Hooper X sit around in the food court and have a conversation in which they compare scars. It was going to be a flashback, an homage to Jaws, complete with the characters' names being Hooper, Brody Bruce, and Quint. Total Jaws reference. Well, before the movie ever got filmed, this scene was scrapped. Kevin Smith took it out of the script. It never even got shot. It's not like it's a deleted scene that was filmed and not put in the movie. They never even shot it. But when it came time to write the movie Chasing Amy, Kevin Smith revisited this idea. In Chasing Amy, the characters of Alyssa Jones, played by Joey Adams, and Banky Edwards, played by Jason Lee, who played Brody in the previous film, they have this scene in a bar where the two of them start comparing various scars they've accumulated on their body over the years. This was Kevin Smith's tribute to Jaws. Kevin Smith would get a little bit annoyed because people, young audiences who I guess just don't know their film history, would come up to him and say, "I really like that throwback to Lethal Weapon 3 where they're comparing the scars." This kind of drove Kevin Smith crazy. It was a reference to Jaws, just as the scene in Lethal Weapon 3 was a reference to Jaws, but the kids who hadn't seen Jaws were seeing the first reference to Jaws in Lethal Weapon 3 and assuming Kevin Smith was referencing Lethal Weapon 3, which he was not. And that kind of was a bit of a frustration for Kevin Smith. That brings me back to the question that opened this up. What do you think when I say, "Hey, you guys"? What does that make you think of? Because that is my personal pet peeve. In 1971, after the success of Sesame Street, the Children's Television Workshop began work on their second children's series that would air on PBS. This one was going to be for a slightly older audience than Sesame Street, and it was going to be based on reading and the fundamentals of reading, helping kids to learn to read. The title of the show was The Electric Company, and it was a big hit. It ran from 1971 on PBS straight through to 1985. Now, they only made 6 seasons, but the episodes within those 6 seasons were continuously rerun straight through to 1985. It wasn't until 1985 that the show finally left the air. Well, one of the most famous catchphrases from the show was, "Hey, you guys!" And it began when, in the first season, Rita Moreno, who was a cast member, was playing a woman who was delivering milk with Bill Cosby. You know, that stellar pillar of virtue that should be on every children's show because, you know, what a role model. We didn't know back then. Nobody did. But Bill Cosby was playing a milkman who was trading Rita Moreno, and it was 4 a.m, and they were delivering milk to a house. And they needed to know how many bottles of milk to leave. So Rita Moreno let out a scream.
listen, do I have to get up early like this every morning?
Of course you do. You want to be a milkman? People want their milk early in the morning. First thing, give them their milk. Here you go.
Yeah, sure, you're right. So, what do I do next?
Well, you have to find out just how much milk they want.
Sure, that's easy. Hey, you guys!
Just be quiet. Now, you don't want to yell. It's 4:30 in the morning.
The line became so popular, it became the show's signature catchphrase. In later seasons, it was actually added to the opening of every episode. So when you watched an episode of the show, the first thing you would hear was that.
Hey, you guys!
The line was synonymous with the show, and the show was quite popular among children. I remember I used to have a trivia game called Junior Trivia. It was an old 80s trivia game that was made for kids. And one of the questions on one of the cards was, what TV show begins with the phrase, hey, you guys? Answer, The Electric Company. Like I said, the show aired until 1985. Well, guess what? In the summer of 1985, a little movie came out that you may have heard of called The Goonies. In The Goonies, there is a character named Sloth who is seen early on in the movie chained up watching television all day. And that's what he does. He sits in front of the TV all day. Late in the movie, when the character of Sloth comes to the kid's rescue, he screams, hey, you guys, in a reference to the Electric Company.
Join your friends, you wiggles.
Hey, you guys!
That's what it was. He was referencing the Electric Company. Well, to this day, I run into people who think that that is a line that originated with the Goonies. It's so widespread that there is actually a website and a YouTube channel called HeyYouGuys.com. And in their About Us section, I don't know if it's been updated, but a couple of years ago in their About Us section, it said that they took their name from a line in the Goonies. Now, look, this shouldn't bother me this much. But when you're a website that's devoted to movie, television, and entertainment news, you maybe should do a little bit of research, because this is in your wheelhouse. This is what you do. You're a movie and television news website, and you don't actually know where the phrase comes from that you named your site after, because it doesn't come from the Goonies. I mean, it was in the Goonies as a reference to the Electric Company. It came from the Electric Company. So this is one of my pet peeves. People today don't know their film and television history, and they hear that line and they immediately think, the Goonies. But it's not really from the Goonies. The Goonies was quoting a popular TV show that aired at the time the Goonies came out. So, one of my little irks. And, keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. I know we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.